Hey, so my name is Josh. I'm a mobile developer for Bloomberg, and you may have seen that we've got a booth over there, and some of you may have spoken to us during today. So I work based out of New York, and I'm really passionate about cross-platform. I think it's an amazing way to save money, save time as developers, and basically do more with the resources that we have. So that's why I really love React Native. So what is Bloomberg? Bloomberg is a tech company with 19,000 employees. We have over 5,000 software engineers, and that's 2,000 JavaScript engineers. And estimates would be that we have over 100 million lines of JavaScript. As well as being a financial services company, Bloomberg also has media, television, radio, and is also a news organization with a TV channel, and we have 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.com. This is the app that I work on, which is essentially that same content, but as a React Native app. And how did this come to be? We had a native app. We decided to write our news feed using React Native, basically brand field. Integrate it into our existing app. This was back in 2016. And then around end of 2016, we then released a full rewrite, and we used a kind of app redesign as an opportunity to do that. And it's going to do anything. Oh, God. Okay, that's not playing. But essentially, that's a screenshot of the app, and this is just like, as you would use it if you download it from the App Store. So it's pretty interesting that it gets in like a production app. Our production React Native app, our app is 86.4% JavaScript. And we really find this to be useful in many cases. But for example, articles, you have elements in an article such as, say, paragraph. And for each element type, bullet points, whatever, we have an associated component. And they can be composed in any order. But it's hugely valuable sharing this code from a styling perspective, from a business logic perspective. This basically enables our small team of around 6 developers to create this app and actually reach like millions of users. And these sort of resource savings also apply to implementing entire design systems. So Article was sort of like a design system implementation, but on the mobile and web, we had an effort to basically bring the mobile and web together from a visual perspective, use the same kind of elements, and it basically meant web did its own thing, and on mobile, we only had to do it once in React Native. Applies for bigger, more complex components too, such as this table we have in our app. We've had to write some native code, so we have a lot of native ad SDKs we had to write custom wrappers for. But the great thing is that you can just bail out into native if you need to. Navigation has been difficult for us. It's an area of React Native that has been problematic historically. And so we've had some issues with, say, tabs. It's been too memory intensive to keep an entire tab in memory or in the view hierarchy when it's not visible and stuff like that, which has been a problem. We've also found that Redux at quite a large scale to be problematic. So like an example would be if I'm on my feed, I push an article that fetches some data, we might find our news feed itself would re-render while this transition was happening. So it's kind of like you have to look at this stuff and make sure that it's not happening. But I kind of believe it's like a case of bad defaults. It's not a great default to have every single screen in your application or connected components subscribe to one event source. So that can be problematic, and it has been for us, particularly on Android. You might not notice it on iOS. List view performance can be hard to get right too. Lack of native view recycling can mean that like initial mount times can be slow compared to fully native apps. Not really a problem on iOS that we found at least. This is just an example of where a simple optimization with should component update will like massively reduce the amount of time your app would spend rendering something. And basically, this was the diff actually from the PR that I opened. And basically, it's just we have a row which we're rendering. just wrap it in a component rather than have a big render function within our list view component. So the future and beyond, React Native has definitely helped us ship a really great app, and we couldn't have the features that we have at the scale we have without it. I believe it is the best cross-platform framework there is, and actually the escape hatch of being able to dive into native whenever you need to is super useful, especially for us when we had different, say, contracts we had with advertising companies that there was no way we couldn't have these native libraries included. I think it's important not to ignore performance and platform best practices. So really deeply nested view hierarchies are a bad idea, but they're very easy to create in, say, with declarative components and stuff, which maybe if you're writing imperatively, you would be less inclined to be create this new view class and whatever. I'm hoping that some of the shortcomings of React Native can be addressed with Facebook's Fabric rewrite, with JSI, with Turbo modules, with Fabric. Basically, it's kind of how can we as a community try and work towards closing the gap between React Native and native? That's the question I think we should ask ourselves, and what can we do as individuals working at companies and the companies themselves. I think some companies do a great job, like Software Mansion do a fantastic job with the contributions that they do, and Expo as well. And how can we be better? If you're interested, you can speak to us in the booth. You can also follow me on Twitter, where I've kind of gone into greater detail about the subjects I talked about here at Josh J. Hargreaves, or just feel free to grab me in person. Thank you very much.